Hey, I'm Dave Watkins, Watkins Films, and today we're going to take a look at a new Criterion 4K UHD release of the 1983 coming-of-age comedy drama, a dramedy if you will, Risky Business, starring Tom Cruise in his breakout role. He was around 20 years old when he made this movie, and he's damn good in it. He was a making of what he would soon become a star, and he still is. It also co-stars Rebecca De Mornay as a prostitute that he becomes friends with. He kind of begins a relationship with her, which we'll get more into that later. It was directed by Paul Brickman. Paul Brickman was very well known for writing and directing Risky Business. He's also known for Risky Business, pretty much. But he did direct a few other movies, and he did write some other movies. Of the movies that he wrote, I did recognize Deal of the Century, which starred Chevy Chase and Gregory Hines, which it didn't do very well. I kind of dug it a little bit, but it's been a long time since I saw it. I used to really like anything with Chevy Chase in it in general. But here he writes a very damn good script for Risky Business. It deals with some potentially dark subject matter, but he keeps it light, but he doesn't go goofy with it. So he kind of keeps it. It's a kind of rare thing. It's kind of hard like thing to do, where he kind of keeps it from going too funny and also too dark, and it makes it a very engaging film, and a film that was able to go with a bigger audience for that reason. And it's a satire about Reagan era commercialism, which was all about making money, and so he does a good job with showing kind of the ups and downs of that type of thinking. So Tom Cruise plays a character named Joel. He's just gotten out of high school. He's about to go into college, and his parents are going out of town on vacation. They leave him there for the weekend, and he's supposed to take care of the place. And the first night he's there, which isn't really a bad thing that he does, but he's got this long shirt on and in his underwear, and he dances around the house while listening to that old time of rock and roll. And so that's where this cover here came from. It's a very bold choice for this Criterion release cover. The original cover doesn't look like this. He has like sunglasses on, and it shows this car below it. Here's what it looks like. It's like that, which I kind of prefer this to this, but I think they made a bold choice here. So anyway, later on, through a bunch of plot points, which becomes a little complicated, but it's very well structurally written, he ends up getting with this prostitute played by Rebecca De Mornay, and she comes over, and then they have sex in a very tastefully done and well shot sex sequence. And then the next day, she's like, "Okay, you owe me $300." He's like, "Wow, that's more than I was expecting." But then he has to go to the bank to get it. And while he's gone, Rebecca De Mornay's character steals a crystal egg that belongs to his mom that's worth a lot of money. And so it becomes a journey to get that crystal egg back. That's when he meets her pimp, played by Joe Pantoliano. Now, this is a very young Joe Pantoliano as well. I don't think I've ever seen him this young, but he's older than Tom Cruise's character. And Rebecca De Mornay's character is trying to get away from the pimp, and she comes back to Tom Cruise's house to hide out for a little bit, and then they kind of start as this kind of side hustle business where she's going to bring her prostitute friends over, and then they're going to his friends are going to come over and pay to have sex with him. So it kind of goes down that type of route in a fairly funny way, really. Let's take a look at this Criterion release packaging. Open it up. We have two discs here. We have a 4K UHD, which is pink, and a black one, a black Blu-ray. Now, something I didn't mention before, there are two versions of this movie on the disc. There is the director's cut and the theatrical cut. Now, as far as I could tell, the biggest difference from this is the ending. The ending is slightly different. Now, I think that this movie had a kind of a tough time writing-wise for the last scene. They didn't know how to end it with Tom Cruise and Rebecca De Mornay's character. They ended everything else very nicely, but they didn't know, they couldn't quite figure out what they wanted to tell you about that relationship, and really about him ultimately. But there's two different versions of that scene, and we will talk about it here in a little bit. Here is a nice poster that this is the here you go. This is the original poster for the movie, and it comes with that as a poster. Okay, yep. Let's take a read of this. This talks about the transfer. It says, risky business is presented in the aspect ratio of 185:1, which is widescreen, supervised and approved by director Paul Brickman and producer John Avnet. The new 4K restorations of the director's cut and the original theatrical cut release were created from a 35mm original camera negative and a 35mm inner positive. So they had two different. They had an inner positive and the original camera negative that they went from for the transfer. I'm thinking probably the very end scene that they you know, this is a big difference. They probably had to go to the inner positive for that because they may not have had the original. They didn't have the original camera negative for that because it's not the original ending. So it's probably what the inner positive stuff is about, I would think. The transfer looks good. It's very, very organic. It's better than it's probably ever looked, but it's not the type of movie that's going to floor you in 4K because it does have a kind of an indie type of feel to it. But it looks very nice, and I think it looks very pleasing and very organic to the eyes to me. Now, one other thing here with this, there's a reversible slipcover, but it doesn't have a poster like you would normally see. This is a still from the last scene of the movie, but the last scene of the movie in the director's cut only, and we will discuss that here in just a few minutes. What the fuck? Now, what the fuck is a line that Tom Cruise's character says a few times during the movie, and it has a lot of meaning to it. The first time it's said is by his friend, again played by Curtis Armstrong. He says, like, you know, sometimes you just got to say what the fuck, you know, and then so it becomes kind of a powerful statement in a way because it is, you know, it's like, are you going to do this? Or are you going to make this decision? Or sometimes you just got to say what the fuck and do it. You know, you got to take that chance, and that's what a lot of the movie's trying to say is sometimes you just have to say it, and sometimes when he says it and he goes to do what he's talking about doing, it works out well for him. But other times it ends up getting him in a situation. But ultimately it kind of ends well for him. But he kind of ends like, if this is about commercialism and making money, he kind of ends up at the same spot he was at the beginning of the movie, because he loses all of his money before the end of it. So he gets money from the prostitution thing, but then the pimp comes back and he makes him give it back to him. So he ends up with the same amount of money that he had at the beginning. And also a little bit more to that. So his parents have been out of town. He's been kind of on his own, and he haven't had to go by their rules. They come back in, and he's done a lot to restore the house. Everything looks fine, but then his mom walks over and looks at the crystal egg, and it's got a crack in it. And she like loses her shit over it. And he's like, I don't know how it happened. And they're like, well, you're going to have to pay for it. Now, and it's interesting to see him going from this kind of borderline pimp character to coming back to reality. His parents or the authority has shown back up, and now he is back in his lane. And he doesn't tell them off. He just like, okay. And they're like, and his dad's like, okay, you need to just go out in the yard and start raking leaves, which he does. And then after that, he gets some good news. It turns out his dad comes back out and tells him that he got accepted into Princeton, which there's a scene earlier in the movie while the prostitution ring's going on at the house. A guy from Princeton shows up for an interview, and then then he ends up partaking in the prostitution. So I guess he liked that enough to have this character. He's like, you got what it takes to get into this school. So from there, so that's kind of how that goes. Now, at the very last scene of the movie, you have Tom Cruise's character Joel in this restaurant, kind of a high-end restaurant with Rebecca De Mornay's character, and they're having they're kind of reflecting on what happened during the movie. And then in the theatrical version, there's another scene that happens after that. They have half of that scene in there, and then it has them walking down the road leaving, and it's kind of a fun scene. They're just kind of having a fun time, and they're talking about how she's going to have to pay him to have sex with him now this time, and they're naming the prices and just kind of being jokingly funny about it. And it kind of ends on a high note, in a kind of fairly pleasant way. The director's original vision of this film, and I'm not exactly sure what it means, but I have a few thoughts. So at the end of the dinner scene, he tells her to come over and sit in his lap. So she does that. She comes and sits in his lap, and he holds her in a way that I think the director's intending this to come off as he's consoling her and comforting her, maybe. But it could also reflect that maybe he is becoming more like a pimp, and he's like, come over here and sit in my lap, and be my be my prostitute. Maybe, I don't know if he really. I think to me, it seems like he maybe wants a relationship with her that's not him being a pimp, but it's hard to say exactly. But it's something to think about. I highly recommend this new Criterion release of Risky Business. I think it's very well done. The movie is a little different than I remembered it from watching it a long time ago, but it is edgier than I remembered it. But it does keep it light enough that it doesn't go into too dark of a territory. So anyway, if you haven't done it already, go ahead and like this video and subscribe. And I'm Dave Watkins. Thanks for watching.